And in our history, we've never seen anything like this in our entire lives. We actually worked in the industry when we were teenagers for my dad, who was the state manager for Commonwealth Land Title. And it takes you back a ways. But in any event, before I get started on our presentation on Mars, how many have ever heard of Mars in this room? Okay, so you've heard of it. How many have attended any kind of a conference or any Con Ed or anything like that? Is anybody? A couple. All right. Well, we're going to discuss Mars, what it means and what it means for you. It has some far-reaching effects for you, so I think that this is some really pertinent, timely information, and I am sure that you're going to walk away with some tools that will help you to protect yourself against any additional liability. The Federal Trade Commission, or the FTC, enacted a regulation called MARS, the Mortgage Assistance Relief Services Program, or the MARS rule. And essentially that was an effort to protect distressed homeowners from mortgage relief scam artists. As you all know, anybody dealing with a distressed seller these days understands that sellers are really, a lot of sellers are really in a terrible position. In addition to losing, half the equity in their home, plus all of their retirement funds over the last few years, they're oftentimes going through a divorce, or they've lost a job, or their income's been cut in half. Just a lot of really emotional trauma. So they're ripe for scam artists, and there are a lot of scam artists out there. So the FTC passed this a little bit under the radar. It was passed the end of December, and here it is April, and we're just now really getting to get a grasp on what it means for all of us. So, but it is important, and you do need to understand it. The rule basically focuses on a few areas. Number one, there is a number of, or a lot of prohibited conduct for anybody providing mortgage relief services. There are a number of disclosures that a MARS provider has to give to the general public or a consumer, somebody they've engaged with, throughout the various steps of the negotiation process. A MARS provider cannot take funds in advance of providing the service, so there's a ban on paying fees up front. And there are some other imposition of some other record-keeping and compliance regulations. So that's basically what this consists of, and we're going to go through that in a little more detail. Who falls underneath the definition of a MARS provider? Well, a MARS provider is anyone performing any of these functions. So if you are helping somebody postpone a foreclosure, work on a mod, or negotiate a short sale, or even negotiate a deed in lieu of a foreclosure, then you're considered somebody who is a MARS provider. If you are doing these services or performing these services in exchange for consideration, any kind of a fee, you fall within this regulation. Does everybody understands the difference between foreclosure, modification, deed in lieu? I think we've probably all seen enough of all that stuff that we don't need to define that. The next screen is one that I'd like to spend a little more time on, because this is the part that is the scariest, I think, for all of us. Anyone who provides this service, well, clearly if you're a short sale mitigator or you're somebody providing any of those services, it's clear you fall within the rule. Anyone who offers to provide the service, we'll see later on in the presentation that there are a number of disclosures that you have to make even before anyone engages you. So if you're advertising out there, this regulation lays out some very specific detailed requirements as to what your marketing and advertising material has to say. So if you are handling mortgage relief services, if you're offering mortgage relief services, or the third one, which is the scariest, if you arrange for others to provide the mortgage assistance relief services, you fall under the purview of this regulation. Now, what does that mean? Anyone who is gives substantial assistance, I think is the term they use in the rule. Gives substantial assistance to somebody, a seller presumably, a distressed seller, and who knows or consciously avoids knowing. And at first I thought, what does that mean? Consciously avoids knowing. And then I thought of my 18-year-old. I thought, oh yeah, okay, that's it. Consciously avoid knowing that the provider is doing something that violates this rule. You can be held liable for the same penalties as the bad guy, as the wrongdoer. So if you are giving substantial assistance, what that means is that if you are referring a seller to a mitigator or a mortgage assistance servicer, if you are doing advertising together, or you're participating in some kind of lead generation program, all of those things constitute substantial assistance. And of course, if you know that the company you're referring to is doing something that they shouldn't be doing, or you're trying to turn a blind eye against it, then you're hooked. You're hooked under this regulation. And when you think about that, you know, every seller that you work with, almost 100% of them, even professionals, if they're not professionals in the real estate industry, they're going to look to you for advice. That's the first question. I can't tell you how many accountants, even attorneys, have called me and said, oh, Elise, I think I want to handle my own short sale, but I'm not really sure I know how. Do you really think I should try it myself, or should I get somebody else? And I think it's really clear that when you're in a distressed situation, you're not operating, you know, on all cylinders, and you're looking for some help. And almost always they're going to turn to their real estate professional and they're going to say, help me. Tell me, who can I use? Who should I have help me with this problem? So all of a sudden, you fall within the substantial assistance. All you got to do is refer somebody, and you're hooked. So, and then I think on the other hand, the other piece of this equation is that if you know there's wrongdoing, and it astounds me how many mitigators I've seen try to pull some kind of quickie HUD thing, you know, just before closing or just after closing, or payments under the table, over the table, outside the table. That kind of stuff goes on all the time. I run into it all the time because we help people. A lot of realtors are mitigating their own short sales. You know, attorneys, even law firms, I've seen this go on. So it happens out there. You know, even with reputable firms, that kind of stuff is going on. So if you know of that, and it's, you know, you pretty easily get a gut feeling right away as to whether or not something should be happening or something shouldn't be happening. Is this full disclosure or is it not? It's pretty clear usually. Then I think, again, you're hooked under this rule. So that's the piece that is really important to understand. Obviously, if you're mitigating your own short sales, I would recommend that you take this FTC rule, that you get legal counsel, that you make sure that you're doing everything that you're supposed to be doing, because there's a lot of stuff in here. That's a clear cut. But even if you're referring people, I think that you've got to also be aware of your potential liability. How many people have mitigated their own short sale in this room? Okay. Of all of those people, are you still doing that currently?
We need to get your names on a piece of paper before they I'm sorry.
Now, how many people have had a seller that's distressed and has asked for some assistance? Where should I go? Okay. So I think that it's really, this is important information that you really have to be aware of. The next item that we need to talk about, or the first area of the rule, is the prohibited conduct.